The Accelerator and Engineer are both known for their insane DPS. Because they're both used as heavy DPS towers, it can be difficult to decide which tower you should use. In this video, I'll be explaining in detail which tower is better. I'll be going over the stats and advantages of each tower. Let's start with the Accelerator. The Accelerator can be bought for 2,500 gems. It attacks in bursts, locking onto a single enemy until it dies. Before each attack, it has to charge up its weapon. However, if it's still firing after an enemy dies, it will instantly lock onto the next enemy without having to recharge. One thing that is important to note is that the damage of the Accelerator varies, meaning that each hit can deal 70 to 100% of its full damage. Before I continue, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to join the Blue Hair Mafia. It helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. The Accelerator costs 3,500 cash to place. There's an average DPS of 18.36 and 13 range. Each burst lasts 6 seconds and takes 3 seconds to charge up. It is also able to detect hiddens. The level 1 upgrade costs 600 cash and gives the Accelerator a range of 16 instead of 13. The level 2 upgrade costs 1200 cash and increases the burst time from 6 seconds to 8.5 seconds. The level 3 upgrade costs 3200 cash and increases the Excel's average DPS to 39.35. The level 4 upgrade costs 9500 cash. It doubles its fire rate from every 0.2 seconds to every 0.1 seconds and gives it a range of 19. This is a huge upgrade, taking the Excel's average DPS from 39.35 to 75.79. Finally, the level 5 upgrade costs 30,000 cash. It has one range and increases the Accelerator's average DPS to 208.33. It also reduces the charge time to 2 seconds and increases the burst duration to 12 seconds. Now these are pretty impressive stats. It was recently nerfed, but I'll still say the Accelerator is a very solid tower. Having 208.33 DPS and being able to see hiddens makes it very versatile. The only real issue the Accelerator has is its charge up, with enemies like the Glitch, Tank, and Error sometimes being able to run past the Accelerator before it even gets a chance to attack. Now let's take a look at the Engineer. It can be bought from the shop for 4,500 gems. That's almost twice as expensive as the Accelerator. The Engineer is a very unique tower. By itself, it has pretty bad DPS. However, every time the Engineer attacks the enemy, it gets scrap. The amount of scrap it gets is dependent on the amount of damage the Engineer deals. Once the Engineer's scrap meter has been filled, it creates a sentry. These sentries make up the majority of the Engineer's DPS. The Engineer costs 750 cash to place. The level 0, it has a DPS of 1.99 and a range of 14. The base Engineer does not have hidden detection. Its sentries last 20 seconds. They have a DPS of 1.96, 18 range, and take 10 scrap to build. At level 0, the Engineer is only able to place 2 sentries. The level 1 upgrade costs 250 cash. It gives the Engineer a DPS of 3.32 and 15 range. The level 2 upgrade costs 400 cash. It increases the range to 16 and allows the Engineer to shoot both hidden and flying enemies. Unfortunately, this does not apply to its sentries. The level 3 upgrade costs 1600 cash. It gives the Engineer a DPS of 6.36 and now allows the Engineer to build the Rifle Sentry. The Rifle Sentry has a DPS of 7.75, 20 range, lasts 30 seconds, and takes 20 scrap to build. The level 4 upgrade costs 3500 cash. It gives the Engineer a DPS of 14.88 and 18 range. This upgrade also allows the Engineer to play 3 sentries instead of 2, and most importantly, the sentries now have shields. When the Engineer was first added to the game, it had a major issue. All of his sentries will get destroyed by the Fallen King Stomp, effectively removing all of its DPS. Since the Fallen King just loves to spam stun your towers, it made the Engineer pretty much unusable against it. To counter this, the devs give the level 4 sentries shields. These shields protect them from any attack, but disappear after one hit. This is a huge improvement, because not only does it mean that the Fallen King doesn't remove all of the sentries, it also makes it one of the only towers that is immune to stuns. The level 5 upgrade costs 12,500 cash. It gives the Engineer a DPS of 24.8 and allows it to create minigun sentries. The minigun sentry has 29.76 DPS, 20 range, lasts 45 seconds, and takes 50 scrap to build. The level 6 upgrade costs 35,000 cash. It gives the Engineer a DPS of 49.5 and 20 range. It also lets the Engineer build 4 sentries instead of 3, and the sentries are upgraded into War Machine sentries. The War Machine sentry has 2 rocket launchers. It fires 2 rockets that deal 15 damage every 4 seconds, equaling a DPS of 7.5. However, we need to account for the fact that the rockets deal splash damage. Let's say the rockets hit at least 2 enemies per shot, which gives it a DPS of 15. Its machine gun has a DPS of 93.75. If we add the total DPS of its weapons, we get 108.75 DPS. Now remember, the Engineer can place up to 4 sentries. That means the max DPS of a single Engineer is 484.5 DPS. That's more than 2 times as much as the Accelerator. So does that mean the Engineer wins? Well, there's a few more things to consider. First of all, a max Engineer costs 6,000 more cash than a max Accelerator. That doesn't sound like much, but if you're trying to place 6 max Engineers, it'll cost you 324,000 cash. In comparison, placing 6 Accelerators will only cost you 288,000 cash, saving you 36,000 cash. It's also important to note that despite costing 54,000 cash, the Engineer sentries can't see hiddens. In comparison, the Accelerator can see hiddens at any level, meaning it can easily handle threats like the Shadow Boss. You can also place 8 Accelerators, which is 2 more than the Engineer. This doesn't really help out the Accelerator though, as 6 max Engineers adds up to 2,907 DPS, while 8 Accels only add up to about 1,666 DPS. The final factor we need to consider is their value. If one Engineer has a DPS of 484.5 and costs 54,000 cash, that will give it a DPS to cost ratio of 8.97 DPS per every 1,000 cash. The Accelerator has a DPS of 208.33 and costs 48,000 cash, giving it a DPS to cost ratio of 4.34 DPS per every 1,000 cash. That means that the Engineer has twice as good value and twice as much DPS. Despite the Accelerator having a few advantages, the Engineer's ridiculous DPS and amazing value really gives it the upper hand. While the Accelerator can be better in some situations, I say the Engineer is significantly better. This video took a lot of time to make, so if you enjoyed, please hit that like button and subscribe to join the Blue Hair Mafia. I'll see you on the next video.